Hi friends, from today we are starting newspaper analysis which is relevant for the UPSC Civil Services exam. Before getting into the core content, we will discuss briefly what we are going to discuss first. First we will tell the intent behind why we are starting news analysis series. Next we will discuss the newspaper content in terms of UPSC syllabus. Okay, in that we will be discussing India-China bilateral relations and what is China's current stance in terms of global international landscape. Then we will be discussing about the China's leaders, their different leadership styles, and how did China emerge as economic power. Post which we will be discussing about the India's approach towards handling the COVID-19 in unlock 1.0 phase. So with that discussion, the video will end, but we are planning to come up with the videos for India-China border dispute and India-Nepal Kalapani issue and related constitutional amendment going on in Nepal's legislature. We will also be coming up with videos related to migration labor issues, deep web and dark web, Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan and USA related issues. So when already many institutes are discussing about the newspaper, why is there need for another newspaper related discussion? I think we would like to focus mainly on learning outcomes and exam related discussion. Of course, we don't compromise on the conceptual clarity. We will not be discussing each and every paragraph in the newspaper article which we take up. We will use that article as a base and try to discuss the issue in the holistic context so that it will give more value to the student. So to ensure the consistency in the deriving of value from the newspaper articles, we have come up with a framework which I will discuss in next few minutes. Mere factual content which doesn't require much analysis will not be discussed as part of these videos. They will be provided as part of our current affairs content in the website. For example, species discoveries and wildlife related issues we will be discussing as a factual content in our website. Okay, so as I told that we are coming up with a framework so that there is a consistency when we approach an article, and at the same time we will derive maximum value out of the newspaper article. So the theme which we use for editorial or news analysis articles is we will find out what is the central theme of the article, what is the main proposition of the author. Once that is discussed, then we will discuss about the arguments which author has propounded to support his central theme. Then we will use all this content, how exactly we can use it in the exam. Of course, we will also discuss if there are any other points of discussion, that also how we can use it in the exam. Then if it is merely a news piece, not analysis or editorial, we will see it is in the from the lens of what, why and how. What means we will discuss the news to the point so that you explain to a layman. But we will not stop only with the news to the point. We will also provide the necessary conceptual background for it as and when required. If it is small conceptual background, we will discuss as part of news analysis. But if it requires at length discussion, we will make it as a separate video. Okay. Then we will, of course, before going to and choosing a topic, we will choose if it is relevant to the exam only, but we will tell you explicitly from in which paper under which topic this news is relevant. Okay, then we will come to the how part, how exactly can we use it in our answers, whether you can use it in the challenges part, whether you can use it in the introduction, or you can use it in the way forward. Where exactly can you use it, and which kind of question can come up in the examination related to this news. Okay, so we follow this framework strictly, so that all articles we will use this framework, so that we will not miss any important points. Okay, in future we are also thinking to include articles from the other papers, Indian Express and Live Mint, since we are starting just now. So we will come to know that if other articles will also make and enrich the knowledge of the aspirants for the exam. Then we will include those relevant articles. Then we will make the corresponding notes available on our website. Then we will also try to come up with the weekend revision videos. This we may not immediately promise, but maybe after 2 weeks of regular updation, regular uploading of the videos. Later we will try to do these videos so that we can plan better. Okay, then we will also make consolidation of the notes so that the same notes can be used just before the exam. We will not have in that notes all the conceptual clarity and everything. We will make it that notes very short and crisp, so that just before the exam you can revise it. What is the intent of all these improvements is to save the time for the aspirants and make it easier for them to prepare for the exam. Okay, so the first article we are going to discuss today as part of the newspaper is, in the editorial page we can see the dimming of a Chinese strongman's aura. The question is not whether but when disgruntled forces might challenge Xi Jinping's leadership. So the central theme of this article is authority of Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, is in decline. That is the central theme. So the author says that it is in decline, for which he has propounded some arguments. So first, the arguments he has given is, at present there is a growing dissatisfaction in China, which can be seen in their social media. So there is a lot of criticism which is coming out in the social media platforms. Okay, and the criticism is mainly centered around that there is no accountability for the outbreak. So they are demanding for the accountability. So that is one sign that the authority of the Xi Jinping is about to decline, according to author. Okay, short term, he is predicting that the economic hardships which may be encountered by the China, because many countries are trying to shift their investments out of the China. For example, South Korea was in talks with India to shift their investments, to shift their industries from China to India. Earlier, Japan also moved out of China. So these are the signs that China may face unemployment issues and some economic hardships. So these economic hardships can fuel the public dissent, and once there is a public dissent, since it is not a democratic country and authoritative country, so China may severely come down on them. Because of those consequent security actions, the respect and the authority which Xi Jinping has may come in decline. That is what the author is predicting. And externally, already China is facing the pressure from the other countries like US, Japan, Australia. Australia has sought for the inquiry into outbreak, the origins of the outbreak. So we all know that Wuhan market is predicted. Wuhan market is considered as the origination of this coronavirus. So, but some theories say that it has been artificially designed virus. So the international community is dissatisfied about the way China has handled this issue. They did not come out openly about the origin of this virus, and in the initial stages, the spread of the virus in their country, and they did not impose the restrictions to curtail the coronavirus spreading to other nations. They did not take actions. So that is why the countries are alienating the China. So in short term, these things are signs of Xi Jinping's authority may come down. Okay, then in the medium and long term, they are saying that other powerful leaders, internally other powerful leaders who were charged under corruption by Xi Jinping and punished, they may use this situation and question the authority of the Xi Jinping. That would also be one possibility. And in the long term, China is planning to unify Taiwan with China. Already it is making some moves towards that. So if which is a long-term possibility. So if that happens, USA has a separate legislation which wants to step in and take appropriate measures to prevent that. So in that context, USA may come in direct confrontation with China. The author thinks that China may not be having that might to handle USA, and China may not win against USA. Consequently, China might face the indignation. So this may also spread some disaffection inside China. The people may not endorse the authority of the Xi Jinping. This is what the author is predicting. So these are the arguments which he has put out to drive the point that Xi Jinping authority is coming down. Then, in addition to the arguments which he has propounded, he has also compared Xi Jinping's leadership with his former leaders Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. So Mao Zedong, he is the founder of the People's Republic of China Party in 1949. So he was considered as a fatherly figure in China. Okay, so and then after Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping is known for his economic reforms and making China as the global leader in terms of economy. Okay, so how they both of them are different from the Xi Jinping is they have commanded respect not just through power but also by maintaining friendly relationship with the other powerful leaders in the party. So that is how they protected and they commanded respect, and their authority has not come into question. That is what the author says. And then the Deng Xiaoping is he also maintained friendly relationship with others, and he is whereas Xi Jinping is riding on tigers. What do riding on tigers mean is he is handling the powerful leaders by punishing them for their corruption related issues. So he did not maintain very friendly relationship with them. Even if they are powerful, he has punished them. The author assumes that these leaders, when the time comes, as Xi Jinping is now facing the pressure from the people of the China that there should be inquiry, and also from the international community, they may use this situation to counter the Xi Jinping. Okay, so this is how internally Xi Jinping's leadership style differs from the earlier leaders. On external front, Deng Xiaoping foreign policy is famously known as hide your capacities and bide your time. What do this caption mean is whereas Deng Xiaoping wants to focus on economic front, and he doesn't want to invite unnecessary confrontation which may require shifting of resources from the economic restructuring to defense, so that will unnecessarily waste the resources. So he doesn't want to invite any confrontation when China is building internally its economy. So with that in mind, he doesn't want to involve in direct confrontation for small issues with the international community. So unless and until there is a serious issue which is directly affecting China, he did not want to confront with any other power. That is how he mainly focused on the economy. So, but whereas Xi Jinping's foreign policy is aggressive, he mainly envisages to become China wants to become Asia's power, and if circumstances of, favor, even China wants to be world power, global power. So that is why so Xi Jinping is mainly aggressive, which can be seen the policy towards with respect to Hong Kong, with respect to Taiwan, and with respect to India at the border, and also with respect to Vietnam in South China Sea. So all these things are indicative of Xi Jinping's foreign policy of aggression. Okay, that is how they differ from Mao Zedong. Xi Jinping differ from Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping internally and externally. Internally on how they deal with the other leaders, and domestic matters. On external front, how they are dealing with the foreign policy. So here I would like to discuss a few more things about Deng Xiaoping, because it is relevant in terms of world history. Whatever I have discussed earlier also will help you in world history, not only comparing China's leaders among themselves. Sometimes there may be a question asking comparison between Mao Zedong and maybe one of the freedom fighters of Indian independence, maybe some communist party leader in India, may be compared and contrasted with the Mao Zedong. That can be a question. Okay, so that is a possible question on what I discussed. So now this what I'm going to discuss may be asked: how did China emerge as an economic power through Deng Xiaoping policies, or how did China has become a global economic power? Okay, so here the framework which you can take up in your answer is, you can discuss both on economic and foreign policy front. So on economic policy front, Deng Xiaoping is remembered for his saying, "I don't care if the cat is black or white, so long as it catches mice." So this quote he has used by referring to whether we should go for planned economy or for market economy. What do I mean by whether we should follow social economy or the market economy? So he is of the opinion it doesn't matter which economy you are trying to follow, but the ultimate outcome should be economic strengthening of the country. So with that spirit, he has come up with a policy called open door policy, where by which he has opened the door to foreign businesses that wanted to set up in China. So from whatever earlier there was communes during the reign of Mao Zedong, that has been converted into special economic zones. Instead of communes, he has come up with special economic zones, which are the powerhouses of economic strengthening of the China. Then he mainly focused on strengthening of four sectors: agriculture, industry, defense, and then science and technology. By investing more on science and technology, China could come up with more patents and more industries generated out of that intellectual property. So that is how Deng Xiaoping has tried to strengthen the China. So when these points are very important when you're writing the answer: open door policy and strengthening of the four sectors, special economic zones, and especially by quoting this quote, "I don't care if the cat is black or white, so long as it catches mice," you may score some extra half mark. So then with respect to foreign policy, as we discussed earlier, Deng Xiaoping followed hide the capacities and bide the time. So focus. So don't hide the capacity means don't try to confront the powers like superpowers like USA and the USSR, whomsoever you, because that is will unnecessarily waste the resources. So instead, you take that, you see the time and at the and use that time to economic strengthening, and when things are directly affecting the China, then you can use your economic strengthening and your might to confront the other powerful nations. So that is how Deng Xiaoping has come up with has strengthened the China. So as I discussed in my earlier framework, so takeaway from this entire discussion is there can be a question: will China change its stance amidst the current scenario, amidst the prevailing circumstances in China and globally? Are each China set for change? So if they ask this question, you can quote all the points which I have discussed in the context of diminishing of Xi Jinping authority. So the same points you can tailor for this question, and remove the Xi Jinping authority, and there you can just replace it with diminishing China's authority or diminishing China's credibility. So you can use that, and you can mention those points. You can take either stand, like it may be totally coming into decline, or you can also say that, as in the article it has been pointed out, at least in China, short term China would face the short lived isolation, as it has happened in Tiananmen incident. Tiananmen incident is related to cultural revolution. So when there was a cultural revolution in China, the then Deng Xiaoping has come down severely on them, which has invited sanctions and isolations from the other countries. So it has affected the China for a short period of time. So you may get doubt that Deng Xiaoping wanted to take care that these things won't happen, but he tried to take care. But when these things happened, when there was no other go, when it was affecting China directly, he had to come down severely on the protests, because of which China had to face the lot of tensions. Then coming to the next question, as I told you already, they may ask you question that compare Xi Jinping with his precedents under the world history topic. Okay, then there can be a question how Deng Xiaoping led China's emergence as strong economic power. So whatever points I have discussed, all those points are relevant as part of your answer. Okay, then there were many news items related to how government is planning to handle the COVID-19 scenario in the next few days. So there was a news item there was a news item in the front page: stay more vigilant than ever against COVID-19 threat, as our Prime Minister has told in his, as part of his Mann Ki Baat. So as part of his Mann Ki Baat, he acknowledged that migrant workers are facing severe problems, and he cautioned the entire Indian population that be cautious. Unlock 1.0 doesn't mean that corona has gone away. We have to take due measures. And emphasizing that, there was an editorial that opened with caution. So till the vaccination is discovered, or till we achieve the herd immunity, we should be cautious. Of course, resumption of economic activity is essential, but the vigil on the virus must remain. So this should be our stand, this should be our approach till we till we invent the vaccine. So emphasizing the same, there was another news item: indefinite lockdown is more harmful. So as we have seen in terms of migrant workers and many people dying out of hunger and other fallouts. So if the cure may be more dangerous than the disease itself. In with that spirit, the lockdown may be helping in curbing the COVID-19 spread, but lack of industrial and economic activity, lack of work is making people go on hunger, and because of hunger, people are dying. So that is more harmful than the corona related, because the causalities related to corona are, I mean, people among whom affected, only a very less percent are dying. So we have to resume the economic activity, but at the same time, vigil on the virus must remain. This should be our spirit. So upholding the spirit, the experts have come up with a set of measures. So you can, if the vaccine is not discovered, or if any people are, there are 500 candidates who may be going for the interview. So in the interview, if you face the question that what should be our approach till we discover the vaccine, so then you can take this whatever these experts have told, so you can quote these things and add your innovative measures to these measures. So as part of what the experts panel said, I have divided them into two categories. One is COVID-19 specific measures, the other one is the other measures. Okay, COVID-19 specific measures is we have to do extensive surveillance to identify the severe acute respiratory syndrome and initial flu influenza patients. Okay, these two people, we have to conduct extensive surveillance to identify them, and by which we can identify the hot spots where the corona may spread quickly. Then we have to ramp up the capacity of states to test, because you all know that there is one view that India is testing at a very low percentage and at a very low scale compared to the other countries. That is also one reason we are seeing less number of cases compared to other countries. This is one set of experts are taking this stand. So we have to ramp up the capacities of the states to go for more testing. Then we have to publish that data transparently on the public domain. That will help people to take due measures, safety measures, and the vigil on the virus will remain. So that is why the experts panel has come out with these COVID-19 specific measures, and to implement these measures there should be systems in place. So for those systems to be in place, they have advised for a panel of health experts and social scientists to assess the health and humanitarian crisis from time to time at the district level, state level and central level. So by ensuring these institutional practices at the different levels, we can implement those surveillance, testing and publishing of data effectively. That is the view of the experts. Then the other measures which they are planning to come up with is we should resume the health services, other health services, primary, secondary and tertiary. You might have seen one news item where one couple had run from pillar to post taking their child who is affected with the chicken pox, but they had to run from one hospital to the other hospital. So that shouldn't be happening actually. So to address those kind of issues, the panel has suggested resumption of the health services, both primary, at all levels, primary, secondary and tertiary health, tertiary levels. So then we, of course, they are proposing to increase spending on health to 5% of GDP. In my opinion, it may not happen immediately, because currently government of India is spending only 1.15% of GDP. They want to increase it to 2% of GDP as per the national health policy, but it may not happen soon as per the views of the experts and the former bureaucrats. So this may be a long term measure. So that you can, so how can you use it in the exam? As I already discussed, you can quote these measures as the way forward, or in the interview you can quote these things as a way forward for the next few days till we invent the vaccine. So it is relevant in terms of GS2 health related thing, and also you can expect COVID-19 related question across the papers, because that is the bedrock on which almost every issue is being analyzed during this COVID-19 scenario. So we cannot completely say that it can be asked only in this paper. So having this COVID-19 perspective will help you to write extra 2-3 points in your answers that may enrich your answer. So finally, as part of this video, we will be discussing the this article, a phantom called the line of actual control, which has come up in the op-ed phase. So in the op-ed phase, the author says that there are agreements related to border cooperation, between India and China, but those agreements are sorry for that, but those agreements are not effective in resolving the disputes between India and China. So this is his central theme or proposition. So the before going to the arguments he is putting forward, I will just discuss what are the four agreements currently in place between India and China with respect to border. So in September 1993, we have come up with an agreement, maintenance of peace and tranquility along LAC. The spirit of this agreement is respect the LAC. The second agreement which we have come up in November 1996 is confidence building measures in the military field, specific to military field, so that the credibility is established between both both the armies, so that we can proceed towards the solution. So this is obviously a logical second step to the maintenance of peace and tranquility. So as part the spirit of this thing is reduce the military forces within mutually agreed geographical boundaries along LAC. For example, no air intrusion also within 10 kilometer of the LAC. So these measures will help that India is not not including into the territory, and China is also not intruding into the territory. So now we can trust China, now we can trust India. So in that way it helps the in building the confidence, which will provide conducive environment for the solution. The third logical step is political. So what parameters and what values and principles should guide the settlement of boundary question? So those things are part of the April 2005 agreement, and in October 2013 we have come up with another thing is a border defense cooperation. Border defense cooperation is in October 2013. So these are the agreements which we maintain. One is maintenance of peace and tranquility, second one is confidence building measures, third one is political parameters and principles for the settlement of boundary question, fourth one is border defense cooperation. So then what are the arguments the author put forward to say that these agreements are currently not being effective in solving the dispute or in progressing towards the dispute? First of all, his first argument is there is flaw in agreement itself. In September 1993 agreement, there is a provision: pending an ultimate solution, the two sides shall strictly respect and observe the line of actual control. So this provision says that both countries should respect and observe the line of actual control. And it also has the provision that no activities of either side shall overlap the LAC. So whether it is China or India, their activity should not overstep the it was overstep, not overlap. So overstep the LAC. So it should not cross the LAC. But the problem in this provision is basically there is no clarity on what is LAC exactly. So when you don't have clarity on what is LAC, how can we expect that people would observe the LAC? So instead the provision could have been both sides should recognize existing lines of deployment of the respective armies. Currently in 1993, then what was the deployment line of Indian Army? What was the deployment of Chinese army, they should have uh, considered those things as reference instead of LAC, because there is no clarity on what LAC itself is. When there is no clarity on what is exactly LAC, how can we assume that people will respect and observe the LAC. So this is the main argument the author has propounded. The second argument he has told was, even if there is no flaw in the agreement, for example, in October 2013 related border defense cooperation argument, there is a provision like which says that both countries work with the other side in combating natural disasters or infectious diseases that may affect or spread to the other side. So here it is mentioned, highlighted, the author has highlighted the infectious diseases, especially in the context of COVID-19. We all know that there was a standoff between the Indian and Chinese soldiers, and there was severe injuries on the side of India, and who were hospitalized. So it clearly shows that there was no following of physical distancing measures, social distancing measures, and in fact it would have caused to spread the COVID-19 if any of the Chinese soldiers were also have the COVID-19 or otherwise. So the spirit of the argument is, the spirit of the agreement is not respected by the parties. So that is the argument which the author is proposing. So not following the agreements in letter and spirit is the other argument the author has put forward. In addition to those two arguments, what is discussed is the author feels that China is not in hurry to settle the boundary question. How did he come up with this conclusion is, in 2003, when India, the then Foreign Secretary Mr. Kanwal Sibal has submitted the map to the Chinese counterpart, the Chinese counterpart did not exchange a word whether he is approving or disapproving, or why, if he is disapproving, why he is disapproving. So sorry for that interruption. So since they did not mention any reason, it shows that they are not very keen in addressing the problem immediately. They feel that by disturbing the India by frequent these kind of incursions, India's focus will not be entirely on Indian economy, and it will keep disturbing India, so that India's resources will have to be deployed at the border. And when the borders are not well protected, a country cannot afford to remain in peace and focus entirely on the economic front. So even in our earlier discussion, we have seen, if a country has to grow, it has to strengthen firstly in economically, then it will have the might and money to ward off any threats from the external side. So China continuously want to keep India in these kind of skirmishes. That is good. That is in China's interest. So they are more interested in India to keep this issue open, so rather than solving it. That is what the author's proposition is. So so the takeaway here is, we can, in GS2 you can, under international relations, and in GS3 under national security, whatever I have discussed is relevant. So what kind of questions can come is, do you think the border related agreements between India and China are effective towards the resolution of border disputes? Provide your arguments. You can quote those two arguments. Then why do you think that India and China not be able to resolve border disputes for so long? So you can quote those 2 points. Extra, you can quote whatever I discussed. China is not very serious. So those things you can quote and substantiate your answer. Thank you.